Vietnam, the war that was in a war. During this time, the Cold War was taking place and the idea of brinksmanship was taking hold. This is where you basically tease the enemy to a fight and at the last minute back down. With that in mind, back to the Vietnam War, where this is done by both sides. Vietnam was the product of French colonialism. Before the Vietnam War, you have to look at who controlled the region. During World War II, Japan was spreading their influence and taking parts of China, Philippines, and many other islands. To avoid direct conflict, Japan demanded the withdrawal of French territory in the Southeast Asian countries also known as Indonesia or Indochina. France accepted, saying that they needed troops in Europe because Paris just fell to Germany, and they needed soldiers, not casualties. The native Indonesian people hated Japanese control, and so, in response, America started sending guns and supplies to local resistances, one of whom was Ho Chi Minh. After World War II, France tried to control the lost colonies and reinstate order under French rule. But the Indonesian people saw France as just another Japan coming to take their resources and labor. France instated the Vietnamese king and saw no success in stabilizing the situation. Now you have the French Indochina War. America was split on the issue as they had supplied the resistances and yet fought along the French in Europe. America decided to help their European ally by sending arms and supplies, but to no avail. The French were pushed out of Southeast Asia, and the Geneva Accords were the outcome. Now you have 4 new countries: North Vietnam, South Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. North Vietnam was under control of Ho Chi Minh, while South was under control of Ngo Dinh Diem. The North government was based around communism and knew by doing so their Chinese and Russian communist allies would support them in any way necessary. While the South was not really a democracy, it was more of an anti-communist country. They did not have elections because they feared of electing a communist leader, as most farmers and the poor in the country supported communism. The two countries were split on the 17th parallel and left each other to their own devices. The North gained support and started to draw up plans to invade the South. With the support of China and the USSR, the North knew they could win, and with that the North began building a road through Cambodia and Laos to help with the attacks in the South. This road was named the Ho Chi Minh Trail. At this time, Eisenhower was president, and word that if South Vietnam fell to North Vietnam, who would be next? Laos? Cambodia? India? Eisenhower wanted to prevent the threat of the domino effect. This is where governments fall to communist influence the same way dominoes would. The U.S. started by sending advisors and weapons to the South's government and saw some stabilization of the front, but with North's guerrilla warfare tactics, the South's conventional warfare was redundant. When JFK became president, he strongly promised to fight on communism, so he sends helicopters and 400 Green Berets, which are a U.S. counter-terrorist group who specialize in secret operations. Think of them as the Navy SEALs of Vietnam. JFK authorized the plan named Operation Ranch Hand. This is when a chemical, Agent Orange, was sprayed all over plants, farms, and forests in the North, which would destroy any hiding places that the North Vietnam Army could use along with any food that the North would be growing. At this time, the leader of South, Ngo Dinh Diem, started cracking down on the people in his country to find any supporters of communism after a bombing incident almost took his life. This event resulted in him losing a large amount of support from the larger Buddhist population, which found themselves persecuted more than before. At this time, the South's ability to sustain a stable government was waning. Soon, a successful coup was executed, and the leader Ngo Dinh Diem was killed and soon replaced by Du Long Vien Minh, who was a general for South Vietnam. Not much progress was to be had on either side during the war, but then America joins in a direct fight against North Vietnam. This was all because of the fact of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The Gulf of Tonkin was when 2 North Vietnamese gunboats fired at an American destroyer. While the incident has been theorized that it was nothing more than justification to go to war, as no evidence was shown to have actually seen any gunboats, but current President Lyndon B. Johnson declared war on North Vietnam and sent 2.7 million troops over. America was once at war again. Now the full might and support of America is going to help South Vietnam in winning this war. America starts by taking control of South Vietnamese army and drawing up plans to attack the North. At this time, the use of napalm was common among fights and was used to its very full extent by American and South Vietnamese soldiers alike. The North Vietnamese army, aka the Viet Cong, was resisting any advancements the Americans would make by attaching bombs to the local populace, so that America would harass the local populace for fear of the Viet Cong. Operation Rolling Thunder was often a title given to the pilots by bombing jungles where they thought Viet Cong fires would be. A lot of fighting was exchanged for the next few years, and the North seemed to be getting the advantage because of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The American soldiers could not stop the Viet Cong from using this road, as it went into Cambodia and Laos, and America was not at war with them, so they could not cross the border without causing another war. At this time, Nixon was elected president. At the same time, public opinion hated the Vietnam War, saying it was not our problem. Nixon got representatives from both sides, and they arranged a ceasefire, and immediately both sides violated the terms. More fighting continued into the next years, and as another election year, Nixon wanted to gain support and promised to bring American troops home. This was called Vietnamization. When Nixon announced this, the Viet Cong doubled down on their efforts and gave America a greater reason to leave Vietnam. When America started to leave Vietnam, they did a bombing run called the Christmas Bombing. This is where they bombed key Viet Cong positions. A peace treaty was organized on January 27, 1973 between America and North Vietnam, and on the 29th of March 1973, the last American troops withdrew in Vietnam. America still supplied the South with guns and equipment, and 2 years later they would see the North Vietnamese tanks roll into Saigon. The capital of South Vietnam fell, and with it the South.